When we think about fossils, we usually think of them as giving us answers about our planet's deep past. They're like the foundation of our whole understanding of life on Earth. But what happens when we dig up something that doesn't answer questions, but instead just asks a whole bunch of new ones? Something that, by all accounts, just shouldn't exist. And that quote right there, that's the real heart of the mystery we're getting into. We're going to look at some documented artifacts that seem to throw a massive wrench into the timeline we've all so carefully put together. Okay, let's dig in. So, we have this thing called the geological timeline. It's really a cornerstone of science, right? It tells us when mountains rose, when dinosaurs were walking around, and, of course, when the first humans showed up. It's a whole story told in layers and layers of rock. But a few strange discoveries just don't fit at all. Now, just take a second to look at the scale here. It's immense. We're talking hundreds of millions of years. Whole worlds rise and fall. Life begins, it evolves, and then way, way over on the right, you see that tiny little sliver? That almost invisible little line? Yeah, that's us. That's all of human history. Or at least that's the official story we've been told. So the first big challenge to that story comes from what you could call impossible objects. We're talking about things that look, well, clearly man-made, but they're found locked inside solid rock that's millions of years older than humanity is supposed to be. Our first case file starts in Dorchester, Massachusetts, way back in 1851. Some miners were blasting through solid rock, about 15 feet down, and after all the dust and smoke cleared, they found something that just made absolutely no sense. The rock they were blasting through, it was Precambrian conglomerate. Now that's basically just ancient, super hardened gravel that's been cemented together over eons. And it was dated to be over 500 million years old. You heard that right. And what they found inside it, well, that's the real shocker. So here's the puzzle. They found this bell-shaped metal vase, and it's intricately decorated with these beautiful silver inlays. I mean, it's clearly a manufactured object. The skeptical argument, of course, is that it must have just fallen into a crack in the rock way later and then got sealed up. But here's the thing. The original reports, the people who were there, they never mentioned seeing any kind of crack or fissure. It was found, they said, inside the solid rock. And you might be thinking, okay, that's just a one-off, a fluke. But it's not. Let's jump ahead to 1885, over to an iron foundry in Austria. Workers there were breaking up lumps of coal, and they stumbled upon something just as weird. Now, this coal was ancient stuff. It was formed about 60 million years ago from the compressed remains of prehistoric forests. But when they split this one particular lump open, they found something remarkable tucked inside. It was this perfectly shaped iron cube, and it looked like it had machined edges. When they analyzed it, it turned out to be nearly pure iron, so it wasn't a meteorite or something. The easy explanation, right, is that it's got to be a piece of modern mining equipment that just fell in with the coal. The problem with that is, the records show it was found during a routine delivery, and there wasn't even an active mine nearby where it could have come from. And the Wolfsegg iron isn't the only weird thing found in coal, not by a long shot. In 1891, a woman in Illinois was breaking up a lump of coal for her stove and found a delicate gold chain inside. A few years before that, miners in West Virginia found a small, intricately carved doll deep inside a coal seam that's dated to 300 million years old. So you see the pattern here, right? We have to keep asking this question. How on earth do you get man-made objects inside solid, unbroken chunks of coal that formed long, long before people were supposed to exist? Maybe the strangest of these objects isn't an object at all, but more like the ghost of one. This next discovery comes from a mine in the Donetsk region of Ukraine, and it's much more recent, from 2008. So imagine this. Miners are working 300 feet underground. They look up, and there, on the limestone ceiling above them, is the clear imprint of a wheel, spokes and all. The impression was three-dimensional, which means a real, solid object must have been pressed into that soft mud before it hardened into stone millions and millions of years ago. The wheel itself, it was long gone, decayed into nothing, leaving only its fossilized mark behind. Now, geologists have tried to explain this away. They've suggested maybe it's a weirdly formed mineral deposit, something called a concretion. But nothing they've proposed really fits the shape. It just looks like a wheel found in rock that's 300 million years old. That's almost 299 million years before humans are supposed to have invented it. Think about that. Okay, so impossible objects are one thing, but now we're going to turn to something even more profound. What appear to be the fossilized remains of humans themselves, found in rock layers from impossibly ancient eras. Back in the 1990s, some researchers were out studying limestone formations in Nevada. And what they found there wasn't a tool or some kind of object. It was something much, much more personal. The rock layer they were looking at was from the Permian period. We're talking 250 million years ago. That is before the first dinosaurs showed up, in an era that ended with the single biggest mass extinction event in Earth's entire history. And pressed into that ancient stone was what looked for all the world like a perfect human handprint. And I'm not talking about just some vague shape here. The fossils showed clear impressions of 5 fingers, a defined palm, even a pressure pattern, like someone had literally just pushed their hand into some soft mud. Now, some geologists argue it's just pareidolia, our brains seeing patterns in random erosion, but when you put it side by side with a modern handprint made in clay, the similarity is just eerie. The debate is definitely still raging on that one. Our last piece of evidence is, well, it's maybe the most unsettling one of all. It was discovered way up in the high Arctic of Canada, in a place where pretty much nothing lives today. It's a fossilized finger. The rock it was found in is dated to 100 million years ago, smack in the middle of the Cretaceous period. This is when T-Rex and Triceratops were roaming the Earth. And this fossil is incredibly detailed. You can see the bone structure, the joints, even what looks like an impression of a fingernail. CT scans actually revealed internal shapes that matched a human finger. As you can imagine, the scientific community was completely split. Was it just a misidentified part of some ancient sea creature, or was it an uncanny, totally unexplainable human remnant? All right, so after looking at all of these bizarre fossils, where does that leave us? I mean, what are we supposed to make of all this? We're basically faced with 2 very, very different ways of looking at the exact same evidence. On one hand, you've got these incredible, mind-bending possibilities. Are these clues to some lost high-tech civilization from millions of years in the past? Or, and you hear this one a lot, is it maybe even proof of time travelers leaving stuff behind? But then, on the other hand, science tells us to pump the brakes. Are we just misidentifying some weird natural rock formations? Are these just modern objects that somehow got mixed in with ancient stuff? Or are they all just elaborate hoaxes and simple mistakes? The debate is obviously far from over, but the question these artifacts force us to ask is a powerful one. Look, it's easy enough to dismiss some of them, or maybe even most of them. But what if just one of these things, the vessel, the finger, that wheel imprint, what if just one is exactly what it appears to be? What does that do to the story of us? What does that rewrite about our entire past?